that we can share it with those who weren't able to make it tonight. Oh, here comes a whole bunch more people. One more second. Okay. Great. On behalf of the West Seattle Democratic Women and the 34th District Democrats, I'd like to welcome you to this debate between candidates for the 34th LD Position 1 legislative seat. I am Carla Rogers, Chair of the 34th. I am making a recording of this debate. You might have heard that start a moment ago, which will be posted on our YouTube channel tomorrow. I will start us off tonight with our land acknowledgement. The 34th Legislative District Democrats and the West Seattle Democratic Women acknowledge that we work on the unceded traditional land of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, original stewards of the land, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. This acknowledgement only becomes meaningful when combined with accountable relationships and informed actions and acts, only as a first step in honoring the land we were on and their people. While our focus tonight is on the election and our candidates, I would be remiss in my duties if I did not mention the horrific avoidable tragedies in Buffalo and Uvalde in the last 10 days. Our hearts are broken. Anger and disgust reign. This is why we fight for our democratic values. This is why we vote. So let's take a moment of silence to raise up those affected. Thank you.
I'm Ann Martin, Chair of the West Seattle Democratic Women. Good government is the foundation of equitable and just policies and laws. We seek for our voices to be heard through the actions of the officials we elect at the local, state, and national levels. Your participation in the democratic process and your votes are crucial to maintaining a strong democracy. We want you to have the information you need to make informed decisions when you are casting your vote. To that end, we are here today to hear from the candidates who have filed for the position being vacated by the retirement of Representative Eileen Cody. These candidates are looking to gain your vote in the August primary and the general election. The audience should remain on mute and respectful throughout the debate. I will also ask you for your patience.
We will begin with 3-minute opening statements from each candidate. During the question and answer portion of the event, we will alternate questions between candidates as follows. The first candidate will have 2.5 minutes to answer the question. The second candidate will have 2 minutes to either respond or respond and rebut the other candidate's answer. The moderator may modify the question between responses to prompt debate, in which case the responses may be extended at the moderator's prerogative. The time will be kept on screen. We ask the candidates to stay within their allotted time and to finish their sentence when the time has expired. We're going to try to keep this to 90 minutes, and that will depend in part on the length of the candidates' answers. I will paste the questions into the chat for reference as we go.
At the end of the question and answer portion, we will hear 3-minute closing statements. Emily Alvarado will be first to share opening statements, and Leah Griffin will be first to share closing statements. Are there any questions about the format tonight? Great, with everybody muted, it worked. Okay, at this time, I'd like to introduce our moderator for tonight, Rachel Glass, past chair of the West Seattle Democratic Women and current vice chair and programs chair for the 34th District Democrats. Thank you, Rachel, for agreeing to moderate this debate.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Carla. So we're starting with our opening statements. I'd like to ask Emily Alvarado to begin with your 3-minute opening statement.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you to the West Seattle Democratic Women in the 34th District for hosting this debate. My name is Emily Alvarado, and I'm running to be your state legislator because I believe that government has an obligation to meet the basic needs of people, and because I've spent my entire career in public service fighting for just that. I'm a lawyer. I went to the University of Washington School of Law, where I was a Gates Public Service Law Scholar. I'm a Latina, raised in a multicultural household, and I'm committed to advancing racial equity and defending civil rights. I'm the child of public school educators and the parent of 2 kids in Seattle public schools, and I care deeply about the future of our public education system and the future of our environment. I believe housing is a human right. Everyone deserves access to safe, affordable housing. I'll bring over a decade of experience to the legislature to address our housing affordability crisis. I've served as the director of the City of Seattle's Office of Housing, where I delivered progressive results, stewarding the voter-approved Seattle Housing Levy and making investments in affordable apartments and homeownership, including here in the 34th District. I advanced climate resilient housing, helping homeowners convert from oil to electric heat and investing in transit-oriented development. I passed cutting-edge policies to address displacement and make sure that long-standing residents have the opportunity to stay here, not be priced out. Through the pandemic, I passed tenant protections, delivered rental assistance and foreclosure prevention services, and I've implemented policies to reduce homelessness, investing in permanent supportive housing, which is the evidence-based solution to ending chronic homelessness. I'll bring a sense of urgency to the state and the experience on how to scale effective solutions. And I'll fight for progressive revenue because I know firsthand of the power of public investments to create lasting, equitable infrastructure for our communities. I will unequivocally defend the right to access abortion and reproductive health care. As a community organizer with Planned Parenthood for several years, I fought on the front lines defending reproductive justice, and I received national recognition for my work to build leadership of Latinas to build a stronger reproductive justice movement. Every child deserves access to quality public education. And I spend as a national nonprofit executive right now, I pass policies to create more early learning and child care centers to support the needs of working parents and to help children thrive. I will work hard so that investments in our public schools go beyond basic education and provide needed health and nutritional supports, arts, and culturally competent education to close the opportunity gap. Throughout my career, I've brought people together to address complex issues. I've worked in coalition, been accountable to the public, and centered the voices of people most impacted by decisions. I look forward to sharing more about my candidacy, and I hope to earn your support. Thank you.
And Leah Griffin. Thank you, Emily. Leah Griffin, you now have the floor for your 3-minute opening statement.
Thank you, Rachel. My name is Leah Griffin, and I'm running for state representative in the 34th Legislative District. I'm a school librarian who knows the power of a story. My story is that in 2014, I was the victim of a violent crime, and I encountered a healthcare and justice system that was broken. Over the past 8 years, I have worked to pass both state and federal laws to reform the systems that failed me. I, through tenacity, figured out how to make government work for me. And I'm running because I want to use that knowledge and experience to make government work for my neighbors too. Right now, top of mind is reproductive rights. When Roe falls, we will see a 385% increase in pregnant people seeking care in Washington. What I've learned from the last decade of work to increase healthcare access for survivors of sexual assault is that the right to a procedure does not guarantee meaningful access to it. We must stop Catholic hospital mergers that limit abortion healthcare. We must fund abortions as costs escalate due to demand. And we must train doctors as other states stop. We need an experienced leader who has led and won specifically on healthcare access and training. I have. In addition to my work on healthcare, I work with youth every day. And what this pandemic has laid bare is that we are in the midst of a statewide behavioral healthcare crisis. The firefighters union #1 concern is mental health care. Our nurses and teachers are burning out. And if we're going to change this story, we must act with urgency to embed services at the point of need. And we need more housing. We cannot keep repeating the same failed efforts from the last decade when we could be exhausting all options, like social housing that utilizes a public developer model to keep costs permanently affordable. We must invest in permanent supportive housing using union labor that puts people in homes rather than sweeping them from block to block. My vision for Washington is one where we work together to back evidence-based solutions to our most challenging problems. Access to reproductive care is threatened. We have to change that story. Wages for workers have stagnated. We have to change that story. Climate change is getting worse. We have to change that story. Healthcare is bankrupting people, and we have to change that story. And that's why I'm running. Because in a time of cynicism and exhaustion, I am so filled with hope and energy in the knowledge that we can make this better together. I'm proud to have the endorsement of State Senator Joe Wynn, the sole endorsement of the King County Young Democrats and the Amalgamated Transit Union, and a plethora of forward-thinking leaders across the district and state. My name is Leah Griffin, and I'm asking for your support in State Rep Position 1 for the 34th LD.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Emily. Let's get started with the questions. With redistricting, the 34th LD extends as far east as I-5 and as far north as the International District. The 34th Legislative District now includes not only West Seattle, Vashon Island, White Center, and a diminished area of Burien, but also South Park, Georgetown, SoDo, Pioneer Square. What is your favorite restaurant in the new neighborhoods of the district? And why do you love it? And we're going to start with Leah on this question.
Oh, my favorite in the new neighborhoods? Which one? So I'm going to start with South Park, just down the street. I love Loretta's. It's a great place to go get a tavern burger, inexpensive. They've got great beers on tap. It's all wood and nice and homey inside. So I'm going to rep for Loretta's in South Park. In Georgetown, I'm a big fan of the 9-Pound Hammer over there, playing some shuffle ball. So those would be two that come top of mind in the new area. And we've got some work to do to help Pioneer Square get back into fighting shape after the pandemic. So I'm really excited to use my years of work in the restaurant industry as a service industry professional to help restaurants recover after this pandemic and make sure that they have the things that they need to stay open and to continue serving great food.
Thanks, Leah. And Emily.
Thank you. Well, I should say I'm really excited about the new 34th district and the opportunity to speak with voters and include the voices and issues that are facing folks in Pioneer Square and SoDo and Georgetown and South Park. Those neighborhoods bring us incredible new businesses to support. I love Fonda La Catrina in Georgetown, was there the other week with my kids after the reproductive justice march at Cal Anderson Park. And I'll be pleased to continue to support businesses in those neighborhoods. You know, we have a lot of work to do to make sure that small businesses are thriving as we come out of the pandemic. And we need to be investing in our small businesses because we know that that is a core piece of having a thriving community. And we can do that by virtue of ensuring that we're getting revenue and support for investments from lots of progressive solutions instead of just taxing working people and small businesses. We can make sure we're investing in our small businesses in multiple ways, but excited to have no more restaurants to go to.
Thank you. And now on a more serious note, for both candidates, this expansion means that the population and the diversity of our district has vastly increased. How would you work to bring the district together, engaging the new neighborhoods? And which of the new areas represents the greatest challenge for you to engage? And what new issues might this expanded territory bring to the district? And we'll start with Emily on this question.
Yeah, thanks so much for that question. First of all, I'd like to say that, I have spent my career bringing together diverse people to work on tough issues, building deep, meaningful relationships on which I believe is the basis of getting good things done. So I'll bring that to the table. First of all, the expansion of this district really centers the need for us to work on environmental justice issues. The Duwamish Valley is the area most impacted by air pollution and water pollution, the presence of the Superfund site, the impacts and projected greatest increase in sea level rise in any place in Seattle. And so we need to be working with communities in South Park and Georgetown to make sure that we're addressing climate change in a way that centers community. When I was at the City of Seattle Office of Housing, I was proud to participate in the Duwamish Valley Action Plan, which was a government and community combined strategy to address the multiple issues that communities are facing, both climate change and displacement, because we know that communities of color are those most impacted by some of our environmental injustice. And community through that plan identified intersectional strategies that we need to work on: workforce development, climate resilience, anti-displacement, and investing in community. And one of the things that I'll do when elected is I'll make sure that I'm listening to communities who are most impacted, and I'm investing resources in communities to plan and help control their own destiny. That's one strategy that I'll work on. I also think that by virtue of including Pioneer Square, we have a lot to do in making sure that we're addressing issues of unsheltered homelessness. I'll bring an entire decade of experience of addressing homelessness by investing in permanent supportive housing and in partners that know how to create behavioral health services and supports wrapped in housing to serve people under that proven model. And I know how to work with partners there and help make a meaningful impact in both enhancing public safety and treating people with dignity and respect.
Thanks, Emily. And Leah, same question.
I also have a proven track record bringing people together. When I worked on the Approve Referendum 90 campaign, we brought together over 100 coalition partners from a diverse group of organizations and faith leaders, prioritizing LGBTQ community groups and BIPOC community groups. And that coalition was able to push back against lies and a smear campaign to keep our sexual health education out of schools. And we ended up winning that campaign with that group by almost 20 points. So I'm really proud of my ability to work with others to bring people together. And when I look at the new areas of our district, I know that you asked about challenges, but what I really see are opportunities. What we have in the area of the Stadium District, in that industrial area, is the opportunity to be an epicenter for our just transition to clean energy. This is an area where manufacturing is possible, where we can invest in clean energy, that we can invest in workers and good, strong union labor to make sure that we have the products needed in order to do the green housing that we're working on and that we both want. So I see that as a huge opportunity. I think it's so important as we are doing this work to acknowledge that in Georgetown and South Park, the life expectancy for people who live in that area is 10 years less than other areas of the district. So when we look at pollution mitigation and looking at the Superfund site, and we're dedicating funding in the legislature, I see an opportunity to invest in those areas first so that we can look out for the people that are most impacted by the environmental concerns and make sure that we can employ people that are most impacted by our economic concerns. And our new areas give us opportunities to do that.
Thank you both. The next question is going to address education. There is a critical shortage of educators in this state. What do you see as the role of the state in attracting and retaining educators, particularly educators of color, at all levels of our education system? And we'll start with Leah on this question.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. And this is exactly why we need a librarian in the state legislature. We are facing a time in which K-12 education is being attacked and is becoming an alienating space for BIPOC and queer students. Students spend a large portion of their lives in school, and it is our duty to ensure that students have the resources to explore the world and learn who they are, which means, like you said, curricula that is reflective and inclusive of our diversity, and faculty and staff that represent and look like our students. Public education statewide must be fully funded. As an educator, I've seen a specific need for the prioritization of anti-racist legislation that seeks to reform and remake our society on equity and not equality. Students need to see themselves reflected in the school staffing, and we need to safeguard our libraries as spaces for intellectual freedom. In looking at how we're going to retain people, we need to be working with our colleges and universities to make sure that we are providing opportunities for educational incentives, especially for educators of color who are coming into the profession. And then what we need to do is pay them. We face a dire teaching shortage. Low wages, disproportionate to the time and energy of educators, and the ever-rising costs of living in this area make teaching a less desirable option for many bright, talented people. Subsequently, whole generations of students suffer from a lack of programming and curriculum. Equipping young people with critical thinking skills to combat disinformation starts with a vibrant educational workforce, which is why it's so important that we make these investments. And to do this, really, and this is a whole other question, the real answer to this is progressive taxation. We have to fund education as the paramount duty of the state. And we could do that if we didn't have the single most regressive tax structure in the entire country. If we had Idaho's tax structure, then we could fully fund education and make sure that we're paying teachers, that we're having the arts education, that we're protecting intellectual freedom, but we don't. So I have ideas about how we get there. And in 15 seconds, I can't revise our whole tax codes, but I support a wealth tax. I support removing caps on some of the taxes that we have. And I think that we, as we move as a community, can get to the point where we can have an income tax and that will allow us to have these things.
Thank you, Leah. And Emily, same question.
Thank you. Well, I believe that public education is the foundation for democracy. That's why my kids go to public schools. That's why I've invested in public schools. And that's why I have the support, the sole endorsement from the Seattle Education Association and the American Federation of Teachers. I'll focus on making our public schools work for all children. So let's ask why there aren't enough teachers. First of all, we're asking our schools, well, under McCleary, we're providing funding for basic education, but the kids who are showing up at schools need a lot more than basic education. They need healthcare. They need mental health services. They need housing stability. They need cultural competent lessons, and we are not adequately resourcing our public school systems to help meet children where they're at, and that's continuing to drive inequality, racial disproportionate impacts of folks of color, and it's growing the opportunity gap. We need to invest in schools to make sure that teachers have the tools to meet kids where they are so that then the teachers can focus on teaching curriculum. We're not doing that right now. We also do need to look at wages. And that's why I have the support of unions, because I will go and make sure that there are family wage jobs, that there are safe workplaces, and that people have job security so that they can continue to be effective educators and they have the training that they need to be effective educators. As Leah mentioned, we do need progressive revenue to invest in our schools, but I would do it in a way where we're focusing most on those who are left behind with a vision and value of racial equity first, because that's how we're going to fix our schools.
Thank you. Are we moving to the next question? This is also education related. The cost of attending a college or university has increased well over 1,000% in the last several decades. Let that sink in. What do you believe the legislature should do to not only help those currently in debt, but make higher education more affordable for future students? And we will start with Leah on this question.
I think Leah went last time. No.
Okay, sorry, Emily. Wait a minute. Okay.
It's Emily.
It's Emily, and I apologize. Okay, let's see here. I think I just skipped ahead, and that is my bad, and I apologize. Let me just go back to the question.
Just switch the question. That's fine.
So
it's all prompted.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead with this question, and we will have Emily go first.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, we completely need to address the issue of a lack of affordability for higher education. And I support efforts not only to help eliminate student loan debt, but also to create subsidies from the state legislature to our public education system to allow for more scholarships, lower cost programming, and more accessibility into schools. But beyond that, I also want to say that we need to have a vision where going to college isn't your only path to a high wage family job. We have focused too much on the idea that that is people's primary pathway to a living wage job, and I don't think it has to be. So the state legislature, I believe, needs a strong has a strong role to play in also investing in apprenticeship programs, in statewide apprenticeship programs that provide parity with universities and technical colleges so that we can grow skills for people to be able to get into the trades, so that people can have strong pathways to workforce opportunities.
And Leah.
Thank you. Well, the first thing that I would say is that we can expand the Washington State NEED grant. The legislature did expand that grant, and we can expand it for public universities. The other thing that we can do is we can ask our tech companies who are benefiting from our workforce to help cover the cost of our education, secondary or university education. They're partially doing that right now as part of the NEED grant, but I think that there's a lot of room to partner with business to expand on that as well. I think that doing that is going to continue to increase affordability. The state did just put forth $12 million towards apprenticeship programs, and that's great. And we absolutely do need apprenticeship programs. And as we're doing that and we're expanding options for people, I think it's really important when we're providing apprenticeships and grants like that, that we're making sure to fund access to those programs as well. So what I mean by that is when people go to an apprenticeship program in the trades, those programs don't always necessarily provide the supplies that people need to fully participate. Things like childcare, things like transportation, things like steel-toed boots and hats and the equipment that people need to be safe and get the job done. So I would want to, as we look at these apprenticeship programs, make sure that they are robust and that we are also meeting the ancillary need that keeps people from being able to participate in those programs in the first place. So those are the two areas that I would focus on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both of you, and thank you for your patience and flexibility as I navigate these questions. The next question is going to address mental health. Mental health concerns have been exacerbated by 2 years of pandemic, particularly among school-aged children. What do you see as the state's role in addressing this critical issue? And this, we will start with Leah.
Fantastic. So I am a teacher, and I have seen what this pandemic has done to our students. And as I am talking to people at doors and I'm talking to people around the district, what I'm hearing over and over is that everybody is connected to this behavioral health care crisis. The state just put $300 million towards new counselors, and we need to do more. We need to focus on the pipeline of mental health care practitioners and how we can incentivize people to get into that profession. This topic is really personal to me because after my assault, I remember waiting for 5 months on a wait list in order to get access to the behavioral health care that I needed to recover from my PTSD. And I hear similar stories like that all over the place. And I am proud to have the endorsement of Representative Tina Orwall and Representative Lauren Davis, who've been working on this issue. Rep Orwall is actually my mentor, and this year passed House Bill 1477 to create a 988 system for crisis help. And I think what our legislature has really focused on in the last several years is a focus on acute mental health care, on crisis. And what I think that we need to focus on now is long-term counseling, therapy, and mental health services that can take our traumatized society and make sure that people can access those services long-term. So what I want to do is make sure that we have more, I think some insurance companies limit 10 sessions a year in counseling, which is not enough for long-term supportive care in a behavioral health care crisis or long-term stability. So I would absolutely want to work on that. And I also think that it's so important to get these mental health care services at the point of needs. So we need more counselors in our schools, and that is one of my top priorities in this race. And we also need more mental health care services in places like union halls and veterans facilities that make the burden of access lower so that people can get the help that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next question is.
Oh, it's my turn to
Emily.
answer. No worries.
So sorry. Okay,
okay.
Emily, it's yours.
Okay, well, I've spent many years working with supportive housing providers to help meet the needs of people experiencing chronic homelessness, of which many of those folks are experiencing behavioral health challenges or crises. And for many years, it was hard to get the attention of people that this is a massive challenge and issue. The behavioral healthcare needs have been so grown through this pandemic that we see the challenges everywhere, in schools, on streets, in jails, in hospitals. And I hope that it calls us to action because we have 500,000 Washingtonians who have no access to mental health care treatment. We have one of the greatest mental health workforce shortages of any state in the country, and we have a lot of work to do to get it right. Yes, the state has made some progress last year on addressing the behavioral health care crisis at crisis points. And I think that's essential, because what we need is for people to enter the behavioral health care system like people know how to enter the physical emergency health care system, with a hotline and an ambulance and a door at an emergency room and treatment that's available. We need to continue to work to make sure that people know how to reach treatment in crisis. And we also have to incentivize workers to get into the field of behavioral health, of psychiatric care, and of mental health supports and of nursing. And we need to fix our Medicaid payments, and also in order to be able to do that, to help make sure that we're incentivizing through appropriate levels of pay workers to be in the field. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are now moving to our next question. In the 34th Democrats 2021 platform, we supported progression toward an adoption of a nonprofit, publicly financed single-payer healthcare system. We also supported comprehensive healthcare, including mental, behavioral, reproductive, and physical, dental, vision, and nutritional services. Where do you stand on the issue of universal comprehensive care on the scale of fully private to fully public funding? Let us start with Emily on this.
Well, thank you. I support a universal public healthcare system that provides high quality and affordable care to all Washingtonians across all healthcare issues and needs. And we've made progress in this state by launching and convening the work group to identify a pathway towards universal health care in Washington. And I'm eager to read the report and get information from that group. In the meantime, we still have a lot of work to do to make sure that we're expanding under current laws, eligibility, affordability, and accessibility into our healthcare system. One of the things that I'm really passionate about eligibility is ensuring that we're not leaving behind communities. And currently we know that immigrant communities, particularly undocumented folks, are locked out of a lot of healthcare parity. I would support efforts to make sure that we support healthcare equity for immigrants, making sure that we're not pushing communities farther away and forcing greater healthcare needs by not expanding access. I want to make sure on an affordability level that when people are moving from Medicaid to Medicare, that we don't create gaps where people all of a sudden have a lot more costs to pay as they transition to different systems. We also have to make sure that we have eligibility and accessibility for people with chronic disease and chronic health conditions. There are currently gaps that we see right now. Another important point for me is that the pandemic has really shown a light on a lot of underlying inequities in healthcare, many of which are tied to social determinants of health: housing stability, environment, access to nutrition, access to safe neighborhoods. I've spent my entire career working on the social determinants of health to make sure that people live in safe, thriving housing and communities so that they're more likely to enter into a healthcare system with needs that are par with other people, not are exacerbated by lack of because of disinvestment in communities.
Thanks, Emily. And Leah, same question.
Fantastic. Not only do I support all of these things that you've mentioned in our platform, but this is an area where I intend to lead on this. I got involved in politics and activism because I was turned away from a hospital that didn't provide a rape kit. And when I talked to Senator Patty Murray about this, and we looked at where SANE services are available, sexual assault nurse examiners are available nationwide, we found that only 1 in 5 hospitals in the United States had 24-hour access to sexual assault nurse examiners. And as I've been doing this work, what I've realized is that the reason that these services aren't available is that they're not profitable. They are money-losing enterprises for the hospital, and they pass those costs on to the community. So I think it is absolutely essential that we have universal health care here in Washington, and I support the work of the Universal Health Care Commission, which was the first in the nation commission that we have here in Washington. We also need federal help if we're going to do this, and I am best positioned to help get us that federal help as somebody who works closely with Senator Murray, who's the chair of the Senate Health, Education, and Labor and Pension Committee. I look forward to collaborating with the federal government like I have done for the last 8 years to make sure that we have the resources that we need. And I really respect and hope to build upon the work of Representative Cody, but this is a real opportunity, having somebody in this race who is going to champion universal health care because it is so personal to me, because it is so personal to my community, and to have the relationships and skills to get it done. I'm the only one in this race who has passed multiple pieces of legislation, both at the state and federal level. And I'm looking forward to continuing to run on that track record to make sure that we can have universal health care that we need here in Washington and that we deserve.
Thank you. Our next question, running.
Is there an opportunity for a rebuttal on that?
Well,
You said it was at your discretion, so I was asking.
Yes, at your discretion, but we're working on this sort of equal amount of time per candidate. So thank you for the question, though. That is a good question. And please do feel free to, in subsequent questions that I ask, feel free that you can utilize that time in any way that you would like, that you have for your answer. Okay, so the next question, running for this position, you are replacing a representative known for her influence in healthcare policy. Where do you see yourself aligned with Eileen Cody's values and priorities? And where are your positions different? And we will go ahead and start with Leah on this question.
I am really grateful for the work that Representative Cody has done over the decade, and we are aligned on, I would say, almost on most things. So I really want to push on the one area where we're not aligned, which is the universal health care that we were just talking about. I think that this is an opportunity in Washington to lead the nation. And I have been leading the nation on the work that I've been doing for sexual assault survivors, both at the state and federal level. I have worked at the intersection of healthcare and education and public safety. I know how to navigate complex systems. I know how to build coalitions. I know how to move culture along with our policy because I've done it time and time again. So I am so excited to be in a position to help usher forth a universal healthcare policy that makes sure that all of our neighbors and friends in the 34th can access behavioral health care, can access reproductive health care, can access healthcare in a way that is not going to continue to bankrupt people, that makes sure that people do not have to choose between housing and food and healthcare, which all are, I agree, human rights. I really am excited to move on this, and I'm excited to continue to work with the Universal Healthcare Commission to get this done.
Thank you. And Emily, same question.
Emily and Rachel, real quick, I'm gonna bump in here. I do want to let's give Emily the opportunity, a 30-second extra opportunity to do rebuttal on that last question since she asked for it. This is a debate. I think we should do that occasionally. We can't do it with every question, or we'll be here till 10 o'clock. So let's do it for this one.
Okay, thanks, Carla, for clarifying that. Emily, go ahead.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. I did want to say that I have passed dozens of pieces of legislation at the city level, at the state level, and through advocacy at the federal level. But I've done more than advocate. I've implemented laws, I've invested public resources in programs, I've run programs, and I've brought creative solutions to the forefront from inside of government to continue to move the needle on progressive policy change.
Great, thank you, Emily. And did you also want to?
Oh, yes, I'll move forward on the other answer.
Sure, absolutely.
Right, so again, thank you so much to Representative Cody for all of her work and commitment and hard work on behalf of the district. I think the place where we disagree most is around housing. The housing crisis has gotten to real epic levels. And if we're going to address housing unaffordability, we need to be more bold in the solutions. We need to create more housing choices in all communities, more duplexes and triplexes, more buildings that can be accommodated inside of neighborhoods and provide options for multi-generational living, for seniors to be able to live with their children and their grandchildren, for first-time homeownership opportunities. I'm prepared based on years of experience to really move forward with a bold vision of how we create affordable housing, both from subsidizing affordable housing, creating more housing choices, and also making sure that we're protecting tenants and renters.
Thank you. We're moving to a question now that is involving the Supreme Court's recent decision. While access to abortion is codified in Washington law, the Supreme Court's impending decision on Roe v. Wade may drive women from other states to seek care elsewhere. Considering that 40% of Washington's healthcare system is operated by religious institutions that do not support abortion, what policies would you support to preserve the rights recognized in our state and expand equitable access to all women? And we'll start with Emily on this one.
Well, thank you so much for that question. I should start by saying that I will always unequivocally defend the right to reproductive justice for all people, leaving no one behind to the maximum extent possible. As I mentioned, I've been an organizer at Planned Parenthood, including in Southwestern Oregon, fighting on the front lines to make sure that we're both defending reproductive justice and we're stopping any additional attacks on a person's right to choose their own reproductive health care. I've also mentioned before that my work in reproductive rights was focused on creating additional access for Latino communities, and I received recognition for my efforts to make sure that Latino communities had both access to information and were centered in organizing movements to create reproductive justice. And I think that matters in this case because as the Supreme Court makes their decision, we'll see that the impacts across the country fall most to women of color and low-income women. And we need to do as much as possible here to make sure that folks aren't left out and left behind. We still have work to do in this state to make sure that immigrants and undocumented folks have access to reproductive health care also. I do want to say that I'll be a champion to make sure that we use our resources in this state to invest in providing support and extending support to people from other states who come here to seek reproductive justice and reproductive health care access. That'll be a priority. I will not participate in any actions to criminalize or participate in any systems to cut off our state from others, making sure that we're not only acting as a proactive state for our people, but that we're a sanctuary for others as well. And to your point, we need to regulate to make sure that religious hospitals can't block a women's right to access abortion. I've been in the experience where I understand that where you go to a hospital makes a significant difference in the care that you're able to receive, and I'll work hard to make sure that care is afforded to all people.
Thank you. Now we have Leah.
Yeah. This is a big one for me, and it's really nice to hear that Emily has won an award for her organizing years ago. I'm not doing this for awards. I'm doing this work for meaningful policy change. It's nice to have organized in the past, but I want to tell you what I'm doing right now. I am active in the coalition for the Keep Our Care Act. I founded the Legislative and Policy Committee of the National Women's Political Caucus so that I could harness the power of that organization behind the Keep Our Care Act, which was our organization's very first legislative priority. So if I get elected into this office, the first thing that I'm going to do is work really hard to make sure that we can pass the Keep Our Care Act to prevent religiously affiliated hospital mergers so that we can retain as much abortion access as possible. The other things that I support policy-wise is, one, we need to pass an abortion fund like Oregon did and make sure that we have dedicated funds for people to receive this care. Because Emily's right, the people that are going to be most impacted by this falling of Roe are the people who can least afford it. And as we have our for-profit healthcare system, the costs are going to go up and appointments are going to get harder to get. I am in conversations already with Pro-Choice Washington and Planned Parenthood about how we're going to work on this problem. The other area that I think we really need to address is one of training. And this is where I have succeeded federally, where I have got I appropriated $150 million from the federal government to train sexual assault nurse examiners all around the country. So as Roe falls, other states are going to cease training their medical professionals in these procedures. And it is necessary that we both fund the training and work with our colleges and universities to make sure that we can work with other states' medical practitioners to make sure that they have the skills needed to provide this healthcare.
Thank you both very much for your responses. Our next question is addressing homelessness. The Seattle metropolitan area has one of the highest homelessness rates in the country. While cities and counties are largely sitting in the driver's seat on this issue, describe how you imagine your role as a state representative in helping guide policy to address homelessness. Many legislators before you have attempted to solve homelessness. How would your approach to the issue be similar to and different from the policies currently in place? And on this question, we'll start with Leah.
Great. Many elected leaders and my opponent have tried and not succeeded to solve homelessness. If we look at our homelessness crisis, it has gotten exponentially worse in the last 10 years. In 2015, Seattle declared a housing state of emergency. And since then, homelessness has continued to get worse and worse, which is why I'm really excited about new ideas like the social housing model, an idea that comes directly from those most impacted and has received pushback from many of the organizations that back my opponent. We need to move past the status quo. We cannot keep going back to the same housing approaches that have not been working to solve our problems. We need somebody in this role who is not beholden to the same groups who have so far failed to solve this crisis. Let's stop throwing money at the same organizations that are not delivering results. If you look around Seattle and you think that housing is more affordable than it was 10 years ago, if you think that homelessness has improved because of the work that my opponent has done leading this effort at the city of Seattle, then you should vote for her. But she's trying to solve future problems with failed solutions from the past. And I am excited to get in there to listen to new voices, to listen to those most directly impacted, and come up with solutions that are not the same ones that have been continuously failing. And I'll yield my time.
Thank you, Leah. Emily, same question for you.
Sure. So Leah's assessment of the situation of homelessness demonstrates a real lack of understanding. We have a homelessness crisis because over 40 years ago, Republicans in the federal government intentionally disinvested from public housing because of racist anti-poor people policy, and they privatized our housing solutions. We have held steady on investments, if not declining, on public housing at the federal level. Housing is one of the few issues that if you apply to the federal government for housing support, only 1 in 4 people get it, and they get it by virtue of entering a lottery. I'm not okay with a lottery-based system to achieve your housing outcomes. Because of federal policy, which was intentional, local governments have had to step up for a long time and try to fill the gap. They can't. We need federal action and federal policy to meaningfully address the situation. But what local government can do is a few things. One, they can generate revenue. We have the gold standard housing levy in the entire country. I helped to pass it and administer it, creating thousands of units of affordable housing, of which, but for those units, we would have more homelessness. They are proven as a solution. In the city, what you can do is you can invest in creative solutions. I've done that. I've passed creative solutions to scale permanent supportive housing. And what we know is we need to zoom up from the city and make our solutions regional, make them statewide, and I'll bring expertise onto how to actually address this issue so we can hit the ground running with proven solutions to end our homelessness crisis.
Thank you very much, both of you. The next question is an infrastructure one. Are there corridors in this district you would prioritize for infrastructure funding, especially related to freight and transit movement? Increases in population density have long outpaced increased supply and access to public transportation networks. While larger projects are underway for long-term improvements, how would you go about addressing this issue in the immediate to short term? And we'll start with Emily on this question.
Thank you. I was just reading that question. First of all, we need to make sure that as our city grows, as our region grows, as our state grows, we are making investments in our infrastructure commensurate with the growth. And we need to make sure that we're making investments in our public transportation networks. I've been a longstanding advocate and supporter of not only creating housing, but creating housing in a way that correlates to our investment in public transportation. I've worked for a long time with our public transit agencies to create really creative new projects under the FTA to use transit public land to create equitable transit-oriented development. And increasingly, we need that vision of intersectionality and connectivity to make sure that our investments in housing and growth are meeting the needs of our public transportation as well. Look, we know we have challenges right now in West Seattle for having significant mobility constraints by virtue of the bridge and by virtue of limited connections to our regional transit system. I'll work hard to make sure that we fulfill the promise of Sound Transit 3 and make sure that we're delivering light rail and connected regional transit system to the people of West Seattle and our district more broadly. And we need to continue to invest in mobility. The state legislature made some significant investments in transportation last session, including investments in rapid ride and ferry system and some other sidewalk and connectivity investments. We need to make sure that we focus on those mobility connections so that people can really move around the region from their jobs to their home, to their work. And I believe that there is a way to continue to accommodate in this region both economic activity through the vibrancy of the port, as well as meeting the needs of people to live here safely. As we grow jobs in our port system and make sure that we continue to hold on to that economic engine, we also need to be investing in communities so that communities that are impacted by the environmental conditions of living near the port get investments in them to be safe and healthy as well.
Thanks, Emily. And Leah, same question for you.
Yes, I support investments in public transportation, including in King County Metro. We need to be getting people out of cars, and in order to do that, public transportation has to be reliable. I live in an area that is not well serviced by public transit. It's difficult to get out of the Highland Park area sometimes. And so it's really important as we're looking at infrastructure that we're looking at multimodal infrastructure, that we're making sure that people can bike, can transit, can get on the ferry. I think especially if we're looking at infrastructure and the livelihoods and the commutes of people living on Vashon Island, we need to make sure that we're investing in a third ferry route to make sure that people can get around from Vashon to the Triangle route and back to Seattle. So that is absolutely something that I intend on prioritizing as our infrastructure. This is a climate issue. Infrastructure is a climate issue. And if we're going to address our climate needs, it's so important that we invest in high density areas with strong public transit. I am proud to have the sole endorsement of the Amalgamated Transit Union. And I think they know that I'm somebody who is going to focus on the needs of real people in getting around our city and our state. I also think that there's a lot of meaningful work we can do with the Port of Seattle. And I'm so proud to have the endorsement and support of Commissioner Sam Cho, Hamdi Mohammed, and Toshiko Hasegawa. It's so important to have strong relationships with other government entities so that we can get this done in a regional approach. And I have those relationships with lawmakers at the port, the county, the city, the state, and the federal government, and hope to continue to use those relationships to the benefit of our infrastructure here in West Seattle. Light Center, Vashon, Burien, north of 128, Georgetown, South Park, Pioneer Square, and the International District.
Thank you for that. And with that, we have another question that is also infrastructure related. The repairs to the West Seattle Bridge will buy us time to make more permanent repairs to this critical infrastructure. What is your plan to fund a replacement or continued reinforcing of the bridge? And for this question, we'll start with Leah.
My plan is to support the work that's being done to finish and complete the bridge. I just got my update from City Councilwoman Herbold saying that it looks like we're still on for a mid-August start. So I think that it's going to be done before this election of the West Seattle Bridge. So I am going to focus on other areas of transportation so that we can make sure that we have a strong transportation system. So like I said before, I want to invest in Sound Transit. I want to invest in King County Metro. I want to invest in a third ferry run and make sure that we're investing in bike lanes and multimodal transportation and ways for as many people to move as easily and in many ways around the city and the county. I think that, are you hinting at a gondola question in this, Rachel? Is that what we're getting at here? Or is that going to be a separate question?
That is all up to you. You have some time and feel free to address it if you would like.
Oh, well, I know that there's a lot of gondola supporters in this audience. So I think that, as a librarian, I've heard that you're all wanting another study. And as a librarian, I love studies and look forward to being convinced by an updated study on the gondola. But right now, I would be focused on all the other transportation options that the county and city have been working on.
Okay, thank you. And Emily, same question to you.
Well, thank you so much. I remain hopeful that we can stay on track to deliver reinforced and open West Seattle Bridge. We've been without it for far too long, and look forward to making sure that we open up that route for communities. But what the West Seattle Bridge demonstrates is that we have aging infrastructure all around us in this city and in this region and in this state. And the federal government in particular has not been willing to invest adequate resources to make sure that we have safe and well-built infrastructure. That's particularly true in a region like ours with our earthquake susceptibility and with climate change. We have to invest deeply in infrastructure. I've spent a lot of my career investing in infrastructure. I know what it takes to get things built, to plan for projects, and to make deep investments. And that's why I have the support of organizations like the Washington State Building and Construction Trades. What I will do is make sure at the state we're making significant investments in our infrastructure, and I'll focus those investments on clean infrastructure as well, because this is a way that we can build and build better, and build better while building union jobs that help create a strong economy and help move us into the future in a real resilient way. We have aging bridges, aging infrastructure across our district and across the state that I would work hard to prioritize. And I believe that making those investments will be strong all around for our economy by having people working and by growing the amount of work that we have happening in our state.
Thank you. Our next question is going to address climate. What actions will you take to accelerate efforts toward the state's 2030 climate goals, specifically a 45% reduction in carbon pollution? And we will start off this question will go to Emily first.
Thank you. Well, climate change is an urgent issue, and we have to address our climate crisis, and I'm prepared to do that. First, we have to make sure that we're moving towards electrification. We're putting as much funding as we possibly can in electrification, and that we're moving to renewable energy sources. From my perspective, one of the most important things we have to do is make sure that our transportation system is moving to renewable energy. That's because we know that our transportation system causes some of the greatest carbon emissions in all sectors. So I'll work hard to identify all funding possible. I know we've made some gains in the state legislature last session, including by investing in electric ferries, but we need to expand that work significantly. Second of all, we cannot address our climate challenges without addressing our housing affordability issues. We will not drive down the carbon emissions that come from people commuting from work to home if they continue to have to live too far away from jobs. That's why my housing platform of fixing our housing affordability crisis will be a climate solution. As I mentioned, we need more housing choices across the state. We cannot be shy anymore. We need to create more options in all communities. We need density by transit. We need to make sure that the buildings that we're building are also climate resilient, since after transportation, housing emissions are the second leading industry of carbon emissions. I have invested in the highest, most climate resilient housing in our city. Now that we've moved towards a building code that calls for electrification, we need to focus on converting and rehabbing existing buildings to make sure that they're climate resilient as well. And I would support significant investment from the state to make sure that we're able to do that by focusing first and foremost on buildings that are serving low-income people and expanding more broadly to our housing stock in general. Third, we can't meet our climate goals without focusing on environmental justice. I support efforts to invest in communities that are most impacted by environmental injustice and environmental racism so that they can lead the vision for how we get out of this.
Thanks, Emily. And Leah, same question.
I grew up in the 90s and saw the media of how we need to take care of our earth better. And I was so frustrated growing up with the lack of action that our leaders took. And I see that same frustration in the looks of the kids that I teach, where I've helped them work on climate action. And I see that frustration, and we need to make big investments in our energy. Housing is great, and we absolutely need to do that work, but where that energy is coming from is the single greatest thing that we can look at in order to make this change. We have to eliminate our use of fossil fuels. We have to make sure that we are capping emissions of major polluters, and we need to invest heavily in renewable energy. We have the opportunity here in Washington to be leaders in tidal energy, in solar, in wind, and all of these renewable energy resources. We also have the technology partnerships here that can help us in this research. So I want to see huge state investments in research and development and production of alternative energy so that we can cut our ties to fossil fuels in not only housing, but in our transportation and in every aspect of our lives. We can't do this as individuals anymore. We have to do this as a full systems approach. I also think in investing in renewable energy like wind, solar, tidal allows us to take a good hard look at our dams. If we're going to talk about the environment, we need to talk not only about energy, but we need to talk about protecting our endangered species. And I was so disappointed last session that the Lorraine Loomis Act didn't pass to protect our salmon. There's a lot more work that we have to do to protect salmon. And I think part of that is taking a second look at hydroelectric power and see where we can put other renewable energy sources to work. And being here in the 34th, it gives us a huge opportunity to do that.
Thanks, Leah. I just wanted to make a general statement here for both of you that if during these next subsequent questions, either of you would like to take 30 extra seconds for additional rebuttal, please just go ahead and raise your hand, and I will give that to you. I just wanted to let you know that before we go on to our next question, which is, while the state legislature has repeatedly tried and failed to enact bans on natural gas, the Washington State Building Code Council, made up of appointees from the governor, adopted revisions to the energy code to require the use, for example, of heat pumps in new commercial buildings. The yes votes on this change cited the need to improve energy efficiency while reducing emissions, while the no votes claimed that decisions of this magnitude should ultimately be left to the legislature. First, do you support this policy? Second, do you support the use of appointees to establish policies that fail to receive majority support in the legislature? And for this one, we'll start with Leah.
Well, let me start by saying that I absolutely support, sorry, let me reread this question real quick. This is a spicy one, Rachel. I really appreciate the thought that you put into this. So we absolutely need to move away from natural gas in the building codes. We're talking about appointees from the governor adopting revisions to the energy code. All right, so I support this policy. I also think that it's important to have people at the table that are appointed by the governor to make recommendations to the legislature. But at the end of the day, I think that the legislature needs to be the one to move on policy. And this is why. We elect our representatives to the legislature to be the voice of the people. And we run a huge risk, I think, of having experts say that they have all of the answers and to be able to pass unilateral policy without input from the general public. And when I'm in the legislature, what I intend on doing is making sure that I'm listening to real people on the ground impacted by these decisions. I think that the recommendations of these committees need to absolutely be taken into account. I look forward to hearing supporting the recommendations of the Universal Health Care Commission that is appointed by the governor. But at the end of the day, it should be the legislators, it should be the people elected by the people, representing the people, who the people have asked to lead them, that make those decisions. So this one I would have absolutely been a yes vote on in the legislature, but I think that we need to make sure that the legislature is making the decisions representative of the people.
Thank you, Leah. And Emily, same question to you.
Thank you. I think that moving the needle on the building code is one of the most critical ways for us to achieve our climate resilience outcomes. And Washington is, in fact, leading the nation on pushing for a building code that then requires development that moves away from oil and gas and moves us towards electrification. And we know that not only is that good for the climate, but it's good for people who are living in the buildings. Those are healthier environments for people. They're lower cost to operate, which over the long term helps benefit us, especially when we're creating this kind of technology and forward-thinking code for affordable housing, and we're saving taxpayer money by reducing costs over time. So I'm grateful that there's leadership in ensuring that we're moving towards building electrification. I can't wait to figure out the policy and financing solutions to move towards electrification in our existing housing stock. I also think that as we move away from things like natural gas, let's figure out how we repurpose some of the existing infrastructure while we transition to clean economies. That's going to be necessary across the board so that we can maximize the outcomes through our transition towards climate resilience. About the governance question, one, we need commissions to continue to be pushing elected officials. We know in many situations that folks with expertise or folks with lived experience who don't make it to the legislature are important for providing advice and critical information. I tend to agree that I prefer ultimate decisions be made by elected officials so we can have built-in accountability, but I value the effort of commissions to provide meaningful input to decision makers.
Thank you, Emily. Our next question is, hang on here. As a representative of the 34th, you would be expected to work with elected officials from cities, school districts, King County, and the Port of Seattle, among others. How would you approach balancing the different values and priorities of these jurisdictions? Is there any area of policy not under the purview of the legislature that you wish you could influence? And how would you go about building partnerships at the various levels of government to strengthen alliances and achieve our community's goals? And for this question, we'll start with Emily.
Well, thank you so much. I start by saying that throughout my entire career, I've worked across governments and across communities to achieve joint outcomes on really challenging big issues. And I've done this as a government official. So as a director of the City of Seattle's Office of Housing, most of the issues that I worked on, including housing and homelessness, are not confined to a specific geographic area. I had to be working with elected officials and government staff from King County, from the state, from the federal government. And I figured out not only how to build the relationships and find the solutions, but I importantly know where various levels of government hold the decision-making and policy levers, and how to make sure that each level of government is doing something that fits together to move us all forward. So you asked for an example where I wish that there was more purview. And I will say that in light of the tragic events that have happened this week and last week, and far too often across our country of gun violence, I wish we had more power, as the federal government does, to create national policy on meaningful gun reform. That's something that, again, all levels of government work together. I believe that the state obviously has a meaningful role to play in gun reform and gun reform and we've done many steps already, including by setting up the Office of Firearm Safety and Violence Prevention. And I would take actions to resource that. Local government has a role to play, and I wish the state legislature would help empower cities like Seattle to be able to go farther and deeper on gun reform to meet the particular needs of its community. And I wish I could work, and I would hope to engage the federal government on really more meaningful reform. We have to step up and address this public health crisis with some urgency, and that's a place where working together will really make a difference and matter.
Thank you very much for that response. And Leah, please go ahead.
I would love to. That was a lot of talk about relationships with government, and I want to really address this because I think that this is the crux of the difference between Emily and I. So let's talk about our relationships to government. One of us was a city bureaucrat whose job it was to work on these issues that, especially in housing, that continue to not improve. And she can blame the federal government, but at the end of the day, housing has not improved in King County since the state of emergency in 2015. And as somebody who was making a base pay of $197,000 a year to do that work, I really would want more. What you have in me is a person who is working full-time as a school librarian and has still managed in my spare time to pass meaningful legislation at the state and federal level. I have these relationships too, but I have these relationships not because it's my job to have these relationships, it's because it's my passion to have these relationships. I have the support of state lawmakers. I have the support of most of the Port of Seattle. I have the support of school board members, city council, county council members. I have support all over the government here in Washington state because people know that I am somebody who is driven by passion and dedication to make real change for real people. And I'm going to continue to do that. If you look at what I have accomplished in the last 10 years in my spare time, not for money, not for a resume line, not for a job, but because it was the right thing to do. If you give me an opportunity to get into that legislature and use that passion to tell your stories, imagine the change that we can make together. A legislator is not an expert that goes in and fixes your problems for you. It is a community member that works with you to make real change, and I look forward to doing that with you.
Thank you, Leah. Our next question, how has the district changed in response to the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020 and 2021? And how would you build on positive changes, especially with the expanded diversity of the district? And we will start on this question with Leah. Go ahead.
What's changed policy-wise? Very, very little. And that it's so frustrating. And when you ask a question about racial justice, I think that what's important to recognize is that this is not an issue that we can just talk about in a bubble, that every single piece of our policy platform has to integrate racial and social justice. And that is something that I think about in every single thing that we're talking about. We're talking about housing. We need to make sure that everybody has access to supportive housing. When we're talking about transit, we need to make sure that we have a diverse range of options so that as many people can access those tools as possible. When we're talking about education, I want to go back to education because what we have still in this district and around the state is education funding that is based on racist redlining, that uses a prototypical school model that does not prioritize funding based on actual need, but based on the costs of the houses around the school. So I absolutely think that we have not done enough in order to see big changes here in West Seattle. As we expand the diversity of the district, I'm really excited to continue to expand the network that I have in organizations led by women of color, by people of color, of LGBTQ leaders, to make sure that we are bringing as many voices to the table. And you know, I'm not a bureaucrat. I am a real person who has made real change with other community members. And I think that that is so important as we go into this election, is we have enough lawyers and bureaucrats in Washington, in the Washington State Legislature. There's a ton of them. What we need is a librarian, is somebody who has made real change from the grassroots to get in there and make sure that your stories are told. I'm going to listen to people and I'm going to lead with people. And it's going to take all of us to make these big changes that we all believe in. And I'm really excited to do that work.
Thank you, Leah. Same question to you, Emily.
Well, I think that 2021 was for some people a moment of racial reckoning, a moment that brought visibility and light to what so many people, primarily Black people, feel in this country all the time, which is that the legacy of slavery and discrimination persists through institutions and institutional racism. And we have a responsibility to lead with a vision of racial equity and racial justice that centers Black and brown communities and people who are most impacted by racism. I've spent my life working on issues that are related to racial equity, housing, homelessness, in which there's disproportionality, and in which we do need to make change and do things better to undo racism and lead with anti-racism. A few things that we've learned and a few things that I would do. One, our response to racism has to be leading with investing in Black communities, investing in POC communities, and investing in organizations led by people of color. I did that work at the city. I will fight so that state resources go to impacted communities first and foremost, so that they can choose how to spend resources and reinvest in their community after a legacy of disinvestment from white-led institutions. I will listen to the Black Caucus to hear the priorities of that caucus and of Black communities. I'll use my position in the state legislature to lift up the voices of Black people and communities of color who are so often locked out from the floors of the legislature.
Thank you both for that.
Rachel?
Sorry.
Rachel, just want to do a time check here. So it is 8 o'clock. We have 2 additional questions. I'm going to suggest that we do, Rachel, just question 17.
Okay.
And skip 16, and then we'll roll into closing statements and wrap. I would expect everyone that we will be done within about 12 minutes. Please stay with us.
Thanks, Carla. Okay, next question for both of you. Do you support a system of services and treatment for those arrested for drug use as an alternative or replacement of incarceration? If not, why not? And if so, how do you envision that system operating in Washington? And how would you work to establish such a system? And for this, we will start with Emily. Emily, please go ahead.
Thank you for that question. I think it builds off of the last question very well, which is, we know that the criminal justice system is one of those systems that carries today significant disproportionality. And we know that Black folks, Indigenous folks, and people of color are more likely to be involved in the criminal justice system because of the way that the system is set up itself. And we know that the drug laws that have been passed in this country for decades have been designed to target people of color based on the way in which we classify drugs and create crimes. So I completely support efforts of diversion and alternatives to incarceration to make sure that people actually get the treatment and the supports that we need. You know, as part of our public safety crisis, we know that there are so many people that are cycling in and out of incarceration, and it's the same people, and the problems aren't being solved. And that's because incarceration is not what's going to fix the problem. People need behavioral health services. People need trauma-informed care to address intergenerational poverty and violence. People need physical health care. They need other kinds of supports, and programs like diversion, when well designed and when well operated, with input by impacted communities, input by the leaders in criminal justice reform, can help make sure that we're designing systems that actually get to the root cause of our challenges and also have better, more humane impacts for people while creating public safety in our communities.
Thank you very much. And Leah, same question.
Thank you. I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to tour the Monroe Prison Facility. And when I took that tour, I was appalled at what I saw. The faces of men in small windows being held in solitary confinement, others laboring for 32 cents an hour, which is inhumane and wrong. And it really had a huge impact on me. Over the course of my activism and healing from the trauma of being a victim of violent crime, I have confronted an upsetting truth, which is that our approach to public safety both fails to hold violent perpetrators of crime accountable and fails to help victims and criminalizes people who have behavioral health issues that do not need to be criminalized. We are failing in our public safety system in every single way. In the legislature, I will build off my work and many others' work to create a more modern, effective criminal justice and public safety system that centers accountability and rehabilitation and combats systemic racism within its institutions. We absolutely need to craft policies that address the implicit racial bias within the criminal justice officials, both in our police, in our judiciary, in our prosecutor's office. We need to strike down laws and policies that have racial impacts, inherent racial impacts, and we need to redistribute resources and wealth to communities of color across our state to make sure that everybody has a better opportunity. Most people who commit our crimes do return to our community. So imprisonment, in order to be effective, has to be focused on rehabilitation, on access to behavioral health, on access to job training, on access to social support, so that people can come back into our community better neighbors than when they left. So no, we absolutely should not be criminalizing drug use or possession, and we have a lot of work to do to help our criminal justice system be more just.
Thank you to both of you. That concludes our section of tonight's debate on the questions. We're going to now go to our closing statements, and we're going to go ahead and start with Leah for this.
Great. Politics should be about people and not careers. I'm doing this because I know what it feels like when systems fail people. And I know how to pass legislation that addresses the root of a problem. My body of work is a series of successful policies that I've done from beginning to end, from introducing an idea to crafting the language, to passing a bill, to working on implementation, both at the state and federal level. We need somebody who is not entrenched in the same failed policies of the past. We need somebody who is an expert on research, collaboration, and has a successful history of policy reform. As a precinct committee officer, state party delegate, and executive board member of the 34th LD and King County Democrats, I know the issues of my neighbors here in the 34th. I love this community, and I know what people are worried about. We need to protect reproductive justice. We need to rethink our approach to public safety. We need new change when it comes to housing policies, and we need a healthcare system that puts people over profits. In the 34th, we need a third ferry run, light rail, and possibly a new study for the gondola. We need to fully fund public education to support our students and teachers, especially as we're coming out of this pandemic. We need more comprehensive, stringent gun control legislation. I just got off the phone today with the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, and I'm really excited to lead with them in the future in both a licensing system and an assault weapons ban here in the states of Washington. We would like for the federal government to do more, but we can do a lot here in Washington to make sure that we can curb this gun violence epidemic. Government worked for me because government listened to me and let me lead as a real person. Leaders trusted that I could change the end of my story, and I'm running because I want you to have that experience too. I have successfully stood up to institutions to make substantive change. I have spoken truth to power over and over again. And my neighbors in the 34th can be assured that I will stand up for them as well. I would love for you to join me in this people-powered grassroots campaign. You can learn more about my campaign and get involved at my website, voteleahgriffin.com, or please reach out, and I look forward to hearing from you and meeting with you soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Leah. But for both of you, please feel free to put your contact information in the chat, because I know that people will definitely want to reach out. Emily, the floor is yours for your closing statement.
Thank you so much. I believe we can build a future that works for all Washingtonians. I believe that by investing in robust housing, healthcare, childcare, education, and infrastructure, it's both necessary and it can help to build strong communities and a thriving middle class. In a state and a region with so much incredible opportunity, I believe we can have shared prosperity, and I can believe we can solve our biggest challenges. I've spent my whole life working for social justice, fighting for families who need housing, individuals experiencing homelessness, for people who want connection and belonging, and for communities who want safe, thriving neighborhoods. I have a track record of not just advocating, but delivering, implementing policies, investing in solutions, building coalitions to come up with creative ideas. My track record and demonstrated commitment to working families has earned me sole endorsements from the Housing Alliance Action Fund, the Washington State Labor Council, Seattle Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers, and support from progressive champions and leaders like Senator Robinson, Senator Saldana, Representative Macri, Representative Chop, Dow Constantine, Gurmai Zahalai, Councilmember Mosqueda, and many others, community leaders like Estela Ortega and Colleen Echohawk, and more. For the last few weeks, I have had the pleasure of talking to voters across our district. At High Point, I talked to voters and we talked about our kids. We talked about our hope for the future. People shared the same passion for creating affordable communities, for having good schools, reliable transportation, a clean environment, a fair economy. To these voters and to you, I say my personal commitment to social justice and progressive change is clear, as is my ability to bring people together and solve our biggest challenges. I hope to earn your support to be the next state legislator in the 34th district. Thank you.
Thank you both. That wraps up our debate this evening. Thanks for staying over 10 minutes. Appreciate that. We even had more questions that we carved out. So many things to talk about. Want to thank both of our candidates for the time today and wish both of you the best of luck with your campaigns. Please, everyone, mark your calendars for June 8th. It is 2 weeks from yesterday at 6:30 p.m. Our monthly meeting, we will be endorsing for this cycle. If you are a renewing member, you have until June 7th to renew in order to vote. Otherwise, you will not be able to vote that night. If you are a brand new person, it is past the time that you can vote for our bylaws. So unfortunately, you have lost your opportunity there. Anne, handing off to you.
Thanks. Thank you, both candidates. Great listening to all you. Wow. Thank you. The West Seattle Democratic Women welcome everyone to our meetings, which are held the fourth Thursday of the month, alternating between midday and evenings. I put in the chat my email address, so if you want to get on our mailing list and be notified of the subject of each month, please let me know. I want to thank the audience for attending, but finally, let us close with a special thanks to Representative Eileen Cody for her years of dedication to the prior 11th Legislative District and to the 34th District. Big shoes to fill. It does not adequately cover what she has done for this community and for the state. Thank you, Representative Cody, and thank you, everyone. Thanks. I think we're done.
Yeah, one last thing. There were a couple folks who had put questions in the chat, and we're sorry that we did not have the time and the format. We would have been here a couple more hours if we would have taken questions. I think we've put in the chat, Leah had put her information, and I just put in Emily for wa.com. Emily, if you have an email address, an info email address you want to put in the chat, feel free to do that for those folks who didn't get to ask their questions. And I'm sure there will be more debates. So lots of things to come in the next few months. Thanks everyone for coming this evening. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Leah. And thank you, Emily.